Hello everyone, my name is Van Page. I am the new top director for the Forestry Association of South Carolina. I want to thank you for attending the 2026 Timber Operations Professional Continuing Education Update. I wanted to briefly tell you about the segments in this year's update that I hope you will find helpful. You know, South Carolina once again was impacted by mill closures in 2025. But we also have some good news that you'll hear about in the Governmental Affairs Update. Have you looked at the back of a paper package from time to time and seen a logo that had SFI written on it? Well, hopefully in our Sustainable Forestry Initiative segment, this will give you a better understanding of what that means. With road conditions during wet weather becoming more of a concern around harvesting operations, we will present a video about the use of road mats and also information about the South Carolina Forestry Commission's B&P Cost Share program that I hope you find informative. Hurricane Helene caused widespread damage not only in Georgia but also in South Carolina. We are presenting a storm damage and salvage safety video by Forestry Mutual, which I think will be an informative reminder of how to keep safe while harvesting in storm-damaged areas. At the end of each segment, there will be a discussion time with your facilitator. Facilitators, please use the key points in your packet to encourage discussion with your class. Again, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to attend this year's 2026 Top Update.
I'm Cam Crawford, President of the Forestry Association of South Carolina and co-chairman of the South Carolina Forest Recovery Task Force. And I'm pleased to give you an update on the task force's work and also the 2026 legislative agenda for the Forestry Association of South Carolina. The leadership of the Forestry Association of South Carolina and the South Carolina Forestry Commission started meeting in May 2023 to address the challenges facing the forest industry in our state from the announced closures of the West Rock Mill in North Charleston, the Pactiv Evergreen Mill in Canton, North Carolina, and Sunoco's conversion to the exclusive use of recycled fiber. Little did we know that was only the beginning of the closures and cutbacks. Today, South Carolina has a projected loss of 10.7 million tons of wood markets. The Forestry Association of South Carolina and the Forestry Commission formed the South Carolina Forest Recovery Task Force to lead efforts to rebuild the state's forest industry. We are operating under a two-pronged strategy. First, assist existing forest product manufacturers to operate at full capacity to increase their wood consumption. Second, examine new markets that will be a good fit for South Carolina. The task force has conducted 13 meetings to hear from experts regarding new market opportunities for the forest industry in our state. We are encouraged by the opportunities available in the new bioeconomy. Wood can be used to make products such as renewable diesel, marine bunker fuel, sustainable aviation fuel, bioelectricity, and biochar. South Carolina should position itself to lead the nation in the new forest bioeconomy. In January of 2025, the South Carolina Forest Recovery Task Force released a report to the Governor, General Assembly, and Secretary of Commerce outlining new market opportunities for the state's timberland owners and wood supply chain. The report had 4 areas of emphasis: energy, transportation, construction, and agriculture. Right now, there are active projects from each of these sectors interested in locating in the state. The next task force report will focus on retention of existing forest product manufacturers, highlighting actions that can be taken to encourage mill retention and expansion, including looking at legal, regulatory, tax, and incentive policies impacting forest product manufacturers in South Carolina. Now I'd like to overview the plan of action that was outlined in the January 2025 report to the Governor and General Assembly. The first item was recruitment of forest product manufacturers. And in 2005, we wrote, state officials should recruit forest product manufacturers that complement existing industry. Currently, there are active lumber mills, veneer, MDF, pellets, horse bedding, biochar, and renewable diesel prospects representing up to 5 million tons of wood consumption interested in locating in the state. Now, here's the latest update as of January 1st of 2026. Hominique announced it was locating in Clarendon County on May 21st. Hampton Lumber Mill announced it was locating in Allendale on June 24th with a groundbreaking ceremony on November 5th, and Galavant's Ferry Sawmill announced plans for a new sawmill operation in Horry County on September 17th. Carolina Renewable Products announced a renewable fuel plant in Orangeburg on October 7th with a groundbreaking on December 4th. Eastover Chips announced it was building a facility near Savamo in Richland County on December 9th. The next item in the report was forestry recruitment personnel, and the recommendation read, the state should fund a forest industry recruiter at the South Carolina Forestry Commission in next year's state budget. And here's an update from the 2025 legislative session. Governor McMaster and the General Assembly enacted an important recommendation of the Forest Recovery Task Force during the 25 legislative session, providing funding for a forest industry recruitment and retention position at the South Carolina Forestry Commission. This is a significant development. South Carolina needs a forestry professional that understands the state's wood supply chain, assisting with the recruitment and retention of the forest industry. The next item in the report was Sustainable Aviation Fuel Production Study, and the recommendation read, a proviso was included in last year's state budget to authorize the Department of Commerce to pay for a sustainable aviation fuel production study not to exceed $250,000. This study should address the role that the state's forest industry can play in the production of sustainable aviation fuel. A comprehensive strategy should be developed to recruit sustainable aviation fuel manufacturing in South Carolina after the study is completed. And here is the latest update as of January 2026. The Sustainable Aviation Fuel Production Report conducted by the University of South Carolina for the South Carolina Department of Commerce was released on December 20th of 2025. It is currently being reviewed. The study should outline the opportunities and challenges of using forestry feedstock during sustainable aviation fuel production in the Palmetto State. The next item in the report was bulk loading feasibility study, and it read, Dr. Steve Richards with Clemson University is conducting a study for the State Forestry Commission that will help guide future decisions and actions regarding a bulk terminal in South Carolina. Based upon the results of the study, a determination needs to be made about the best location to operate a bulk terminal for forestry in the state. And here's the latest update as of January of 2026. There are 3 options for a forestry bulk terminal in the Charleston area. They are the State Ports, Kinder Morgan, and Carver. A feed study will be conducted at one of these locations. The purpose of this study is to assess the technical and financial feasibility of providing a terminal with wood chip truck unloading, storage, drying, reclaim, and vessel loading. The next issue was South Carolina's energy future, and the recommendation read, forestry advocates should lobby for favorable bioenergy policies and relevant energy legislation during the 2025-2026 legislative session. And here's the update from the 25 legislative session. Senator Russell Ott amended House Bill 3309, energy legislation, with the following language, and I quote, the General Assembly encourages the Public Service Authority and the state's electric utilities to complete evaluations for constructing generation facilities utilizing domestic wood products from South Carolina as a primary or auxiliary fuel source, end quote. Also, Senator Chip Campson added an amendment that read, and I quote, upon passage of this act, Dominion Energy shall evaluate the process for converting the Wateree generating station from coal-fired generation to biomass fire generation. Biomass fire generation includes, but is not limited to, generation from the firing of wood pellets and wood chips. Dominion Energy must make a report concerning the conversion process to the Public Service Commission and the General Assembly by no later than January 13, 2026, end quote. The next item was dealing with research, and it says, encourage South Carolina universities to become partners in advancing the new bioeconomy in the state and support funding for research. Here's the latest update. USC and Forestry are working together on meeting the energy needs of AI data centers using woody biomass. We are also collaborating with Clemson's Wood Utilization and Design Institute on bio-based products with the goal of making South Carolina the leading state for the new wood-based bioeconomy. On October 16th of 2025, the South Carolina Forest Recovery Task Force started working on the retention and expansion of the state's existing forest industry. Workforce, property tax millage rates on forest product manufacturers, and permitting were discussed. South Carolina must create a business climate where forest product manufacturers thrive, leading to mill expansions instead of closures. And now we get to the 2026 legislative and regulatory agenda of the Forestry Association, which will focus on fostering new market opportunities and the retention of existing forest industry. The first issue is carbon neutrality of biomass. The South Carolina Forest Recovery Task Force is working to position South Carolina as a leader in the wood bioenergy sector. We are focused on increasing the use of woody biomass feedstocks to meet the growing energy demands while stabilizing pulpwood markets. Data centers are projected to drive an unprecedented increase in electricity demand. The Forestry Association is working on both the state and federal levels for biomass to be recognized as carbon neutral. The task force leadership has partnered with the University of South Carolina to explore opportunities to meet the energy needs of AI data centers using woody biomass. Also, there are other active biomass projects in South Carolina. To encourage investment in bioenergy, South Carolina needs regulatory certainty regarding the carbon neutrality of biomass. In cooperation with the Forestry Association, Representative Patrick Hadden introduced House Bill 3967 that defines biomass as bioenergy feedstock from manufacturing forest products, including harvested trees or parts of trees, bio-waste, down trees, and use of wood products, among other waste. It also declares that bioenergy produced from biomass is considered renewable and carbon neutral. The adoption of this bill would provide regulatory certainty for forest biomass. Similar legislation has been signed into law in Arkansas, Mississippi, and Louisiana. The House passed the legislation by 111-0 on April 30th of 2025. The bill is currently pending in the Senate Medical Affairs Committee. The next issue is load-restricted bridges. There is an economic development project interested in locating in a rural Tier 4 county in the state. The facility would consume 1 million tons of pulpwood annually. However, every primary highway in the county has a load-restricted bridge. SCDOT has approximately 780 bridges that have been posted with weight restrictions or currently closed to traffic. Weight-restricted bridges substantially impact the forest industry, resulting in inefficiency and higher fuel costs due to log trucks having to travel longer distances to a mill. Traveling an additional 10 to 15 miles when delivering logs due to weight-restricted bridges greatly increases costs to the wood supply chain. The General Assembly provided $200 million to SCDOT for its bridge program in 2025. The Forestry Association is supporting a $300 million request for bridge funding in 2026. The next issue is the growing agribusiness fund. During the past several months, the South Carolina Department of Agriculture Growing Agribusiness Fund has provided funding assistance to 3 forest product manufacturers that are located in South Carolina and 1 pending project for an existing forest product manufacturer that will increase its purchase of pulpwood by 10%. Originally, the Growing Agribusiness Fund was provided with $40 million. Now only $8 million is available in the fund. The Growing Agribusiness Fund has helped with recent forest industry projects. The Forestry Association is requesting an additional $40 million for Growing Agribusiness Fund this year. And here are a few federal issues we're working on. First, removing non-tariff trade barriers. Exporting wood chips globally is a major market opportunity for the state's timberland owners and wood supply chain. We must remove non-tariff barriers that block market access. The next federal issue is EU regulation on deforestation-free supply chains, or EUDR. Unless further changes are negotiated to address EUDR's overly stringent regulations, significant exports to the EU will be put at jeopardy, because jeopardizing South Carolina's timberland owners and forest product manufacturers. The EU approved delay in the EUDR implementation in December 2025, noting that large operators will need to comply with the law starting on December 31st of 2026 and smaller operators in mid-2027. And last is Jobs in the Woods Act. The lack of a qualified workforce was a major factor in one of the recent mill closures. It was also rated as a top concern of existing mills in South Carolina during a recent research survey. Finally, having a qualified workforce is essential in attracting new forest product manufacturers to South Carolina. In my experience, economic development prospects always inquire about the regional workforce during the site selection process. The Jobs in the Woods Act would establish a competitive grant program to make grants to eligible entities to carry out training programs in areas with respect to forestry operations and forest products industries. This would create a pool of talented, trained, and qualified applicants to fill timber industry job openings, helping workers attain quality jobs in managing our forests and strengthening the wood supply chain. Thank you.
Welcome to this training video about sustainable forestry principles and the Sustainable Forestry Initiative. This video is for loggers, operators, and other harvesting professionals to help you understand who SFI is, how our work advances sustainable forestry, and why we care about logger training. I would like to start off by thanking the SFI implementation committees across the US and Canada. These now 35 committees collaborate with forestry companies, professional associations, universities, government agencies, landowner groups, conservation groups, and many others. Together, they promote SFI standards to broaden the practice of responsible forestry. SICs work with logging or forestry associations and others from the forestry community to foster continuous improvement and professionalism of the forest product sector by overseeing logger training. Logger training is a core requirement of the SFI standards. Loggers who are aware of their role as responsible professionals are better equipped to protect the environment. That's why SFI contributes to the training of thousands of people each year to improve their forestry practices and learn about the value of sustainable forestry. Logger training is a very effective tool in promoting sustainable forest management and has been a key component of the SFI program since its inception. Trained loggers are able to work with landowners to help them understand the benefit of sustainable forestry and SFI certification.
SFI is an independent, nonprofit organization that works across the U.S. and Canada to advance sustainability through forest certification standards, conservation, community engagement, and environmental education. Our mission is to advance sustainability through forest-focused collaboration. Organizations that utilize the SFI standards include private forest landowners, public agencies, manufacturers of paper, packaging, and wood products, indigenous communities, universities, and more. The SFI Forest Management Standard is the world's single largest forest certification standard. SFI's mission and vision are the foundation for our 13 principles. SFI certified organizations support these principles because they believe everyone in the forest supply chain has an important stewardship responsibility and a commitment to society. The marketplace is increasingly demanding assurances that supply chains are sustainable. Markets rely on forest certification systems like SFI to deliver that assurance through third-party verification. SFI standards, and specifically our support for logger training, have also been recognized for contributing to state requirements for water quality. The National Association of State Foresters applauded SFI for making important contributions to improved implementation of best management practices for water quality through logger training and landowner outreach. Over half the drinking water in the U.S. and nearly 2/3 in Canada comes from forests. SFI's work to advance sustainable forestry is ensuring the conservation of water resources.
SFI works with forest landowners and managers across the United States and Canada to set high standards for how forests are maintained and sustainably harvested. This means managing forests for purposes beyond just production of wood products to include values like water quality and ensuring a diversity of species in the forest. The SFI fiber sourcing standard advances sustainability by elevating procurement practices and environmental performance of tens of millions of acres of forest land that may not be certified to any sustainability standard. It also includes training and outreach, addresses the conservation of imperiled species, and requires using trained and qualified logging professionals. These standards are updated every 5 years to incorporate the latest scientific information and to respond to emerging issues. These revision workshops are open to the public.
We now have an opportunity to work together more closely than ever before to support both rural and urban communities across the U.S. by tackling climate change, combating the wildfire crisis, establishing environmental justice, and improving our workforce. SFI has a long history in certification standards to ensure that wood products are sourced from sustainably managed forests. The new standards are consistent with Forest Service goals, and they also include requirements like conserving wildlife habitat, providing clean water, train logging professionals, and support conservation research.
Sustainable forestry speaks of a long-term commitment to a renewable resource that's critical for any number of industries. In the book publishing business, without paper, we wouldn't be able to stimulate imaginations, to have people read authors who share adventure, but also so that we can have that combination of trust and verify. So certification is the verification of our tendency to trust our partners, but we're held to a standard from our customers where we expect that they want us to be dead sure that things are as we represent them.
No matter where you are in the country, the SFI standard has been implemented for the past 30 to 35 years. And the nation's forests have become healthier. Our water standards and quality have become healthier, and it's been a tremendous asset for the industry overall.
Third-party independent certification is a cornerstone of the SFI standards. It verifies that all requirements set out in the standards are appropriately met. Auditors from accredited certification bodies visit active harvesting sites and interact with loggers and other harvesting professionals. Forests that have been harvested recently are also checked to ensure that SFI requirements have been met. SFI certified organizations must undergo surveillance audits each year and a full recertification audit every 5 years. SFI certified organizations must also document certification audits and make them available to the public. Continual improvement is built into the SFI certification standards as we monitor, measure, and report performance. At the heart of this approach to audits is transparency.
Loggers and other harvesting professionals are at the very core of sustainable forest harvesting operations. Since 1995, SFI organizations have contributed to nearly $75 million to support local programs through SFI implementation committees. These programs include logger and forester training to reach thousands of independent contractors who are the key to sustainable forest management. On average, since 2015, 10,000 resource and harvesting professionals have been trained every year.
We all were following good practices in the woods, but we wanted to have a uniform standard, if you would. No matter if you're working in California or you're working in Maine or you're working down here where we live in Florida and South Georgia. You know, we're working under standards, and we're working for the best betterment of the industry, the best management practice. That's what BMP stands for, best management practices. That's what we're doing every day to ensure the next generation has a stand of timber to cut, but not just that right there, but we all, as stakeholders in the industry, have good, clean water, and we're meeting those criteria. So we don't think about an auditor coming, we just do what we do. And what's interesting is the standards can't be met unless we, as loggers, do our job and do it right.
Well, long story short, I value SFI training. Well, I think it's helped loggers in a lot of ways when it comes to working with mills, especially when it comes to selling the timber, and just thinking about the bigger picture, especially, and having a set procedure that you're able to change a little bit to specific needs of different jobs is really important, because sometimes you're just cruising along doing your thing, and those best management practices kind of keep a guy in check. They're important when it comes to the day-to-day and remembering at the end of the day why we do what we do, which is at its heart sustainability.
Many of our stakeholders, they may not realize how important the economic and environmental benefits of our forest are. We want all natural resource professionals to be fully trained and be able to share that information with all stakeholders, and these trainings help to make that possible.
SFI principles support conservation in our forests. This means providing for regeneration after harvesting. It also means protecting and maintaining long-term soil health, water quality, species habitat, and much, much more. We use best management practices, or BMPs, developed by federal, state, provincial, or local governments. BMPs can also be developed by conservation groups. The BMPs required by SFI are designed to be the most effective and practical ways to conduct a forest management operation while addressing environmental considerations, such as protecting water resources. Although BMPs are voluntary in some states, SFI requires compliance with BMPs in all SFI certified forests and in all forests providing fiber to SFI certified mills. SFI works to protect biological diversity by protecting and conserving animals and plants and wildlife habitats. SFI is also the only forest certification standard that requires its certified organizations to invest in research. This is important because it allows our practices to evolve to keep up with the latest science. These research results help improve the SFI standards and provide the data and evidence about how SFI certified forests are helping address critical issues like climate change, biodiversity, and water.
SFI is committed to improving the practice of forestry on all forest lands in North America, whether boreal forests or temperate forests, whether naturally regenerated or planted forests. Our philosophy is that healthy, productive forests yield immense environmental, social, and economic benefits and mitigate the impacts of climate change by absorbing and storing carbon in trees, soils, and other biomasses.
SFI's reach goes beyond certified forests. The SFI 2022 fiber sourcing standard sets SFI apart from all forest certification programs because it has mandatory requirements for the responsible procurement of all fiber, even if it's sourced from non-certified land. Loggers and other harvesting professionals are critical to forest conservation because they implement practices on the ground. SFI principles are designed to ensure that SFI certified organizations make a positive impact in the communities where they operate. SFI certified organizations must be fully aware of relevant laws and regulations. Their harvesting techniques and forest management practices must comply with all legal obligations. At SFI, we take things well beyond the legal and regulatory compliance. SFI certified organizations engage in efforts to raise awareness and take action towards the benefits of fire management and minimization of undesirable impacts of wildfire. SFI certified landowners manage the visual impacts of forest operations to preserve the natural beauty of their forests. SFI certified landowners also manage forests to provide the recreational opportunities for the public. 98% of SFI certified lands are available to the public for recreation. SFI's relationship with Indigenous people is a foundational part of who we are as an organization. We recognize that Indigenous peoples are essential partners in any forest-focused collaboration, and that their full participation will better enable us to collectively advance forest sustainability. One of our principles is protecting special Indigenous sites. Special sites include geologically unique or culturally important features. Culturally modified trees, for example, are an important part of the heritage of Indigenous people.
Project Learning Tree, or PLT, is SFI's award-winning environmental education program designed for educators, parents, and community leaders working with youth from preschool through to grade 12. The program helps youth understand and appreciate the value of well-managed forests, including their important environmental benefits, such as cleaning our air and water, providing renewable products, and sustaining a diversity of communities. PLT does this through hands-on engaging activities that develop students' critical thinking and problem-solving skills.
We collaborate with SICs across Canada and the US to deliver logger training. And actually, in fact, Quebec SIC several years ago produced logger training videos with support from SFI community grant funding. And these videos were instrumental in promoting logger training. The point of this logger training is to communicate the value of SFI certification, enhance understanding of SFI standard requirements, such as climate smart forestry, conserving biodiversity, and protecting health and safety. At SFI, we are committed to collaborating with qualified logging professionals to promote sustainable forestry in Canada and the US.
Loggers play a critical role in achieving sustainable forestry and implementing the SFI standards. And we thank you for your work and commitment. We hope you enjoyed this training video and the chance to learn more about SFI.
I'm Holly Welch, the Environmental Program Manager for the South Carolina Forestry Commission. Before we get started on this year's video, I want to introduce you to the BMP foresters from across the state and encourage you to contact them whenever you have BMP questions or issues.
I'm Michael Broom, the BMP forester for the Piedmont region. I handle counties in the upstate, north of I-20 and west of I-77. Please contact me if you have any issues in this area of the state.
I'm Eric West, the PD Region BMP Forester. I can assist you with issues in the northeastern part of the state, mainly above the Santee River and east of Interstate 77.
And I'm Andrew Williams, the BMP Forester for the Coastal Region. I handle the low country below I-20 and the Santee River down to Jasper County. Please call me if you have any questions.
As we are all aware, roads, both woods roads and highways, are a very controversial topic these days. When it gets wet, landowners get upset as the condition of their road degrades, and county officials, residents, and travelers get upset about mud tracking out onto the main road. As areas around the state continue to grow, the small farm-to-market roads that were well accustomed to log truck traffic and muddy tires are now growing up with subdivisions, schools, and stores. Along with the issues of road condition, there are also concerns about the lack of encroachment permits when loggers punch in new road entrances and not properly crossing or cleaning out roadside ditches when a logging job is finished. Counties, cities, and the general public are pushing for more regulation on temporary road entrances to try to fix this problem. I'm here with Scotty Ferguson, the Stormwater Manager for Pickens County, to talk about logging road entrance issues. So Scotty, what's the biggest issue you see with log truck entrances onto the county roads?
Mud on the road, basically. When mud is tracked on the road, it becomes a safety hazard for vehicular traffic. And it also costs the taxpayers money because staff has to go out and clean up the roads and maintain the ditches to prevent accidents. Sometimes the ditches get filled in with sediment and it prevents stormwater from flowing. So it can cause flooding on the road. So at the end of the day, it just becomes a hazard and it also costs money.
All right, so why do these issues matter to the county?
Well, obviously it's a cost because it costs the taxpayers money to have staff go out and clean the roads and equipment, and it's also a liability because we could be liable if a car has a wreck or something and if it's raining and it hits the mud or water goes across the road, it can become a liability to the county as well.
What would you like to see done differently than what is normally happening day to day?
Just if the loggers would maintain the entrances where they're coming in and out of the road and just be mindful that, you know, they are tracking on the road, they have heavy equipment, and just kind of, if they do track on the road, clean it up in a timely manner, and then be mindful of the ditches if they're getting any sediment in the ditches. Sometimes when they turn, they'll turn a little wide and they may crack a pipe or something like that, a culvert that's underneath the road. Just be mindful of those things and just basically keep everything on site.
In this video, we will discuss using wooden bridge mats as an alternative to rock on your haul roads and at road entrances. Hopefully these ideas will help avoid road issues and allow you to keep your wheels turning even when the weather gets wet.
Some of you already use mats as part of your everyday logging activities. Some may use them when working on especially wet sites, and others of you may have never used them at all. These mats are traditionally used in the lower part of the state to allow logging crews to operate on wet, low-strength soils without having to make a significant investment in geotextile and rock.
This same concept can be used to minimize the impact of your logging job. Mats can be placed at road entrances, along wet portions of a haul road, and on the log deck to keep truck tires out of the mud. While there is an upfront cost in purchasing the mats, they have the potential to save you money on rock cost. They also can save you on costly downtime and post-harvest BMP work, especially with the wet winters we've been having lately.
Hi, I'm Roger Cantley. Work with Smith Logging Incorporated out of Andrews, South Carolina. A lot of the benefits, we're able to work a lot of days we wouldn't be able to work. As you see here, we've coming across this field without the mats, the trucks just wouldn't be able to make it across. The drier part of the field that's out in the sun all the time has been able to hold up pretty well, but as you get over in the shade and they don't really want to cut the buffer zone beside the road, it stays shaded almost all day long, so it never dries out. So it helps us to keep working when we normally wouldn't be working.
Y'all came out to one of our logging jobs that we have over here in UG, and we had to put down some mats to keep the guys running. And some of the benefits of having these mats are you don't lose production. You don't have to sit out a day. You're going to lose a little bit of time just getting them set, but the juice is worth the squeeze on that, because it's going to take you a couple of hours to get this set up and you're rolling again, versus having to sit out a day or two. Once you complete the harvest or the thinning or whatever it is that you're doing, and you pull these mats up, your road reconstruction and your finish work is cut. I mean, it's minimal. We can pull these mats up and dress everything back up to the original shape that it was in no time. Whereas if we didn't have them, I mean, you're got to wait till it dries, and then once it dries, you can come in and work it, and that's just too many moving parts. And these mats just really simplify. So the minimal time that it takes to put them down, it saves you days in the end game.
By having the mats and being able to do that, instead of coming and putting rock down at the entrance, and you only may be on a small sale, only there a couple of weeks, you pick those mats back up and take them with you, where if you put the rock down, you leave that rock there, you just left all that money, the mats you're picking up and you're taking with you to the next job. And at the end of the day, you save yourself a little money.
The mats range from $350 to $550 each, depending on what wood they are made from, the configuration of the boards, and the supplier.
Most contractors use a 2-ply style mat where boards are laid lengthwise and another set is bolted on top at a 90-degree angle to the bottom layer. This gives the truck tires a smooth running surface and gives the grapple something to hold on to in order to move them. However, there are a few different styles, and which one you use is a personal preference.
Yeah, these are full cover mats. We refer to as Virginia mats. They can be driven on diagonal, crossways, or long ways. And you can even put them crossways and drop a trailer with landing gear here when you got to drop a trailer in the wet swamp. And these seem to be holding up really well. And then these are just a standard mat. You can only drive on them one way. We've added 2 boards in the center instead of 1 to make them hold up better when you're picking them up. They're all made out of true 2x8s, mixed hardwoods. Some people want all oak, but I've had better luck with gum and mixed. The oak just is so brittle that it breaks.
Mats can be purchased new or used, and in some locations can be rented. We spoke to several contractors that use mats on a regular basis. As you would expect, the longevity of the mats depends on how carefully they are handled when being loaded, unloaded, and positioned on the sale.
Probably one of the biggest questions in everybody's mind is how long will they last, because they cost over $500 per mat. And the longevity of them is how well you take care of them when you move them. If you're rough moving them, they're not going to last very long. Like I said earlier, we have some here that's over 4 years old, but we try to be careful when we move them. We try to keep them stacked up, shake the mud off of them, keep them stacked up so they don't rot. And I don't have any that's actually sitting down on the dirt. I've got some old de-limbing gate that makes a good little rack to keep them up off the ground. And so the longevity, once they get about 5 years old, you're pretty much, most of them are to the point they're not usable anymore. But it all that goes into how well you take care of them when you're loading, unloading, and moving them around with the skidder and the ground that you're putting them on. Stumps, if you have a stump that's in the middle of the mat, where the mat's rocking back and forth every time the truck travels, it's putting stress on those boards, and that one may not last as long. It's a lot of factors go into that, but if you be careful about where you put them and handle them carefully, you'll get 4 to 5 years out of them without any problem. When we're moving them with the loader, and it all depends on how we're loading them. If you're loading them flat, it's just, you just take your time. It's not like loading wood that you just pick it up and sling it. It's just to pick it up easy, try not to crush it. You can't have somebody with a heavy hand on the grapple, closing the grapple. You just want to pick it up just enough so that the grapple just barely closes around the wood, and you can pick it up and it'll hold right there and you can stack them down.
They can be easily transported on a log trailer, lowboy, or regular trailer from job to job. They can be unloaded with the loader and then carried into position with a skidder or a track machine.
On some trailers we have the second and third bolsters spread out enough that they're like, I have 16 feet between them, so I can lay the mat just like flat on the frame in between those bolsters, and it enables me to put more because they're laying flat. If I only have to haul 3 or 4 to a site, I'll stack them up, and when I load them, I'll grab them on the outside board and be real easy with it and pick it up and basically lay it down in between this 3rd and 4th standard, because on the plantation trailers, your back bolsters are always, the framework is always lower. If you put them up on the front, you have to be real careful that you're not coming in a place that has a low hanging power line or anything like that you don't want to catch and tear down. So I usually try to load them on the back end, and if you start getting over 5 on it, you start getting above the top of the bolster, and the bolsters are normally at the legal height, so you don't want to get up over that.
And I've noticed that when people haul them flat, whether it be in a log trailer behind a pickup, that they don't seem to get broke up as bad as when you got to pick them up and stand them straight up and then load them in like putting it in a slot.
To ensure the mats last as long as possible, they need to be set in place before the road becomes overly wet and rutted. If equipment runs over the road and it becomes unlevel, the mats won't have a flat surface to sit on. When a truck runs over top of them, they are more likely to snap and break.
To keep that going, if we see a place that we think there's a potential to have a problem with the road, we'll try to go ahead and have them put them down. If you saw in some of the other videos, our entrance, we knew that was going to be a problem where we drove through the little buffer to get out on the county road. Before we ever moved the equipment in, we went ahead and had that wide span so the truck had room to make their swing and keep the trailer up as much as possible, to keep them up before. That way we still had solid ground and level ground we were putting them on, instead of trying to put them over a rut this deep. You just put so much stress on the boards, you start tearing them up.
On sites where the deck is located close to the road, the entire running area the trucks are on can be matted, essentially keeping the truck tires dry from the time they leave the pavement until they get back onto the road.
If used properly, wooden mats can be used in place of rock for your road entrance. The concept is the same as a rocked entrance. It provides a hard surface to knock some of the mud off the truck tires and allows the truck to transition from off-road to on-road without causing damage to the edge of the paved surface. If mats are to be used at the entrance, they must be installed correctly. The entire width of the road needs to be covered, wide enough to account for the trailer swing so that the wheels don't track off of the mats. They need to be set so that they are at the same level or slightly above the level of the paved road. If they are below the level of the pavement, the weight of the truck will cause the pavement to crack and will cause damage to the roadway.
The good things about the mats is the trailers, when you're driving straight, you know, everything's tracking fine, the trailers are tracking good, there's really no issues, but where you come into an issue is when the truck has to turn, or there's a little bit of a jog in the line that we're running, or back behind me, for instance, the trucks are making a 90-degree left-hand turn to get back to the mill. So we had to widen that access a little bit and kind of pyramid the mat. So we went from 4, 3, 2 to 1, just to account for the swing of that trailer, and that way that the back of it doesn't track off the mats.
And having a few of the mats just before you pull out onto the highway, it gives a chance for the tires to clear themselves of mud, and you're not tracking mud out on the highway and causing a dangerous place right in front of your deck for cars to be driving through. The last thing we want to do is give a bad impression to somebody driving by of our logging job.
When you are finished with the job, the mats are lifted, shaken off, loaded up, and moved to the next track or back to the shop for storage. As we mentioned before, they should last several moves if they are cared for properly.
Yeah, and the easiest way I found to move them was with a skid steer. And the one that we've got back here is about a $10,000 skid steer. We use it all the time. Construction jobs out here. But where it works really good is if this gets packed down in the dirt so tight that mud starts coming up, you know, the mud might be that deep on top of it. You can take them forks and pick it up out the mud and be gentle with it where you can't with logging equipment a lot of times. And flip it upside down and then flip it again, and it'll clean all the mud off of it. And then we've got a little trailer hitch up there that was actually to move trailers around with, is how we figured it out. But it works just like right, where you can slide the forks under and pick them up, and it's out the way to flip them.
We hope this video has been beneficial to you and encourages you to consider this alternative to rock to minimize your impact when the weather turns wet. For better or worse, South Carolina is a different place than it was 20 years ago. As the conflict between growing population and rural land use grows, a solution will be reached. If we as foresters and contractors do not find a solution to the roads issue, county government, state government, or the Department of Transportation will. Let's show them that the forest industry can be proactive, not requiring additional regulations to do the right thing, just like you do every day by using best management practices. The South Carolina Forestry Commission has established the Forestry Best Management Practices Cost Share Program in an effort to improve stream crossing BMP compliance and help protect the waters of South Carolina. Cost share funds will be available to eligible forest products operators for either the purchase of a portable bridge or the installation of permanent stream crossings associated with the timber harvest. To be eligible for the BMP Cost Share Program, applicants must be residents of South Carolina and be certified under the Top Logger Program administered by the Forestry Association of South Carolina or an acceptable equivalent. In addition, applicants must not have any tracts with unresolved BMP compliance issues. Cost share funding is based on actual expenses and varies by crossing type. Approved applicants will be reimbursed 75% of the total cost to purchase a portable bridge up to a maximum of $15,000. Permanent stream crossings will be reimbursed at 40% of the actual cost, not to exceed $4,000 per parcel. Applications must be approved before purchases are made to be eligible for reimbursement payments. For more information on the Cost Share Program and to find out how to apply, visit the Forestry Commission website listed on the screen or scan the QR code. You can also contact Environmental Program Manager Holly Welch if you have any questions. In addition to the Cost Share Program, the Commission also has 4 sets of steel bridges that are available for rent by adequately insured contractors for forestry-related ditch or stream crossings. There are 2 types of bridges available: a 4-foot wide set made up of 3 4-foot by 30-foot bridge sections and a 6-foot wide set composed of 2 6-foot by 30-foot bridge sections. The rental fee for either set is $50 per week. The bridges are located at the Forestry Commission offices in Walterboro and Columbia. Forestry Commission personnel will load the bridges onto contractors' trailers, but they must be secured and transported by the contractor. We can also deliver the 3-section 4-foot wide bridges that are located in Columbia. There's a charge of $3.50 per loaded mile from the Columbia shop. To rent the bridges or for more information, contact Holly Welch or visit the Forestry Commission website.
When Mother Nature unleashes her fury, catastrophic damage and destruction can be the result. Violent weather events like tornadoes, hurricanes, ice storms, microbursts, and floods pose grave danger and risks for everyone, but especially for those who work outside, like first responders, highway crews, utility employees, forest industry personnel, and agricultural employees. The most common forms of storm damage are uprooted trees, lodged trees, broken tops, and other hazards that produce tension wood or wood in a bind. Tension wood can cause serious bodily injury or death to an untrained, unsuspecting worker. If at all possible, let the storm-damaged timber rest before beginning cleanup. Time will allow some of the tension to relax, thus reducing the likelihood of injury. This video will deal with loss control issues during storm restoration and salvage operations. Loss control focuses on one driving issue: reducing risk. Risk is the key building block for any incident. Eliminate the risk, and you've eliminated the incident and possible injury. It is very important to plan the salvage operation thoroughly. As you know, a good plan will increase safety and efficiency throughout the cleanup process. Efficiency leads to reduced risk and increased productivity. When you arrive at the site, first of all, study the direction of the wind throw or blowdown. Then, study the terrain for slope and wet areas. These hazards can increase risk and reduce efficiency if not dealt with in a pre-harvest plan. Proper deck or landing placement is very important. A properly located staging area greatly enhances safety and efficiency during the operation. Remember several important safety considerations as you choose the deck site. Study access to the highway. Make sure you have clear visibility to safely enter and leave the highway. If possible, locate the deck away from the direction of the wind-thrown timber for skidding the butts with ease. And remember, proper deck placement makes skidding operations more efficient. Straight, direct access reduces the amount of movement a skidder must make. Environmentally, this can reduce soil compaction and avoid rutting. On the safety side, skid trails with straight shots do not force the pulled timber into a bind, which could injure ground workers. The preferred method of salvage is to use mechanized logging equipment. By doing this, a huge amount of risk can be reduced. Never put ground personnel at risk when the mechanical option is available. Fully enclosed equipment and rotational felling heads not only greatly reduce risk levels, but also add to the efficiency of the operation. Pull-through and stroke delimbers, as well as other mechanical processing equipment, increase safety and productivity on the modern logging job. Take great care to observe safe work zones and always protect workers on the ground. Skidders are useful tools to clean up storm damage, removing high-risk trees without using a chainsaw. No one is allowed within 300 feet of a felling machine. Obviously, this mandatory rule is designed to reduce the risk of injuries from flying debris and falling timber. Remember, the 300 feet rule is the industry standard for mechanical felling. Again, it can't be said enough. Always use mechanical methods wherever possible during any storm cleanup. However, if you find that mechanized salvage is impossible or limited, manual options can be used. It must be stressed, only fully trained and educated employees are allowed to work in a storm-damaged area. If you find you must do manual salvage in a blowdown, the chainsaw will be the most common tool. The chainsaw is the basic workhorse of the forest industry. In the hands of a skilled operator, the chainsaw can be a very efficient tool in storm damage cleanup. If misused, the chainsaw can be an instrument of injury or even death. Aside from being mandated by OSHA and most insurance carriers, your personal protective equipment, or PPE, provides a barrier from being injured on the job, from head to toe. Timber cutters and saw hands should always wear head protection in the form of hard hats and safety glasses. A complete hard hat package includes protection for the eyes and ears. In some instances, gloves are useful and in some cases may be required. Safety cut-resistant legwear, such as chaps or chainsaw pants, is mandatory while operating a chainsaw. Cut-resistant footwear reduces the risk of a crippling laceration to the feet. A personal first aid kit must be carried while in the field, and you should always wear high-visibility clothing. If you can be seen, you are less likely to be injured. Remember, your job safety policies also apply to any visitors. Over the years, chainsaw manufacturers have added many safety features to their saws to help protect users. All operators must know and fully understand the 3 basic safety features of the saw. First, make sure you are familiar with the operation of the chain brake. You should treat the chain brake the same way as you would the safety on a firearm. If it does not work, the saw must be placed out of service. The saw must be properly started with the chain brake engaged. For maximum safety, you should set the brake if you are walking further than 2 steps, or if you don't have both hands on the saw. Always carry a saw with the brake set. Another key safety feature is the throttle interlock. The throttle interlock system prevents the throttle from being depressed without having a good safe grip on the rear handle of the saw. The throttle won't engage until the interlock is released. The interlock is a very important safety feature. It must never be overridden. The saw should be placed out of service if the interlock is in disrepair. Moving on to the third and last safety, the chain catch peg. The catch peg is located underneath the saw, on the clutch side. This peg protects you from being injured in case the chain fails or derails from the guide bar. Replace the catch peg when needed. Now let's talk about safe operations. Operating a chainsaw safely requires knowledge. Let's start with the saw's reactionary forces of the bar and chain. There are forces at play and are not evident until it is too late. By learning the reactionary forces, you will be able to anticipate and properly brace the saw while you cut in a variety of positions. The pulling chain is on the bottom side of the guide bar. When you are cutting with the bottom of the bar, the saw is pulled into the wood being cut. When you're making a cut with the top side of the guide bar, the saw tends to be pushed back towards the operator. This is very important. Kickback section. The kickback section is the top quadrant of the guide bar tip. This section of the bar must be avoided. Kickback happens 7 times faster than the human brain can react. In order to counter kickback forces, the operator must be in the habit of keeping his thumb wrapped around the top handle of the saw while the saw is in an upright position. The thumb wrap grip keeps the saw under control during the event of kickback. Severe, life-threatening lacerations can occur to the head and neck area if you don't use the proper grip. The next area on the saw is the attack corner. The lower quadrant of the guide bar tip is known as the attack corner. You'll use this area when you need to make a bore cut. Be sure to properly place the saw while the bore cut is being made, and make sure operators are properly trained prior to making bore cuts.
Yes, sir.
No matter the task you face, make sure you develop and follow a plan of action. An accident is an unplanned event. By using a well-thought-out plan, the risk of an incident is reduced considerably. Before you go to work topping and limbing, consider the risk that is present. The goal of using a plan is to establish safe and proper body placement. For example, if you aren't working under the snag, you won't be injured there. Just makes sense, right? Another example would be, if your saw hand isn't on the tensioned side of the limb or the stem, there's no way you'll get a broken leg. Before entering the hazard areas, always use the 5-part plan. The first part of the plan is to check for overhead hazards. Is there anything above me that could hurt me? Do not place yourself in danger. The second step in the plan is to check for spring poles. Be sure to look under the stem for hidden spring poles. The third part of the plan is to determine front load or back load. Will the stem move forward or spring back when a cut is made? The fourth and most important step in the plan is to determine the side load of the stem. The side load identifies the good side or the bad side of a tree or limb. Keep your body on the good side or compressed side of the tree. Compressed wood can be found on the inside of the bow or arch. The wood on the outside is being stretched and is the tensioned side of the tree. Remember, tension wood is the bad side. When tensioned wood is cut, the reaction is fast and most times very violent. You won't be hurt if you stay away from the tensioned side. The last step of the plan is the stem's butt position. Is it elevated or flat on the ground? Remember, the goal of the 5-step plan is to identify risk so you can be safe and place your body properly. Topping and limbing is a very hazardous job. Many reactionary forces are constantly at work. You have to understand the reactionary forces of the wood you are cutting and the reactionary forces of the chainsaw being used in many different positions. Proper starting methods, proper grip, wise use of the chain brake, and proper bracing methods all come together to allow you to work safely at work speed. Now, let's look at the 4 specialized cutting techniques that are useful in tension wood situations. Limb locks and top locks are basically offset cuts designed to keep stored energy from being released violently. The tree's pressure is locked by its own tension. Besides providing a strong measure of safety, locking cuts will help prevent the sawbar from being pinched or stuck, which results in lost production. Even with the best planned technique, it is always a good idea to carry a plastic wedge for those situations when a pinch occurs. Let's review the 4 techniques. The first technique is a top lock. The top lock is used when pressure is observed. Always make the top cut first. If tension is present, the saw will start to be pinched or bound as it cuts down. Once this binding load is identified, make the second cut under the stem, offset to the butt end of the tree or limb. The offset creates a shelf or shoulder, which forms the lock. Do not make the second cut towards the tree top or the saw will be pinched. Now the next technique is the limb lock. The inside cut is made first. Again, when pressure is noticed, compressed wood, make the second on the outside, tensioned wood. The cut should be offset, which creates a shelf or a shoulder to keep the stored energy contained. Placement of your body is important. If possible, make this cut from the good side of the stem. If the cutter is forced to make this lock on the bad side, be sure to keep your legs back and away from the swing path of the limb, just in case the lock fails. The third technique is the tongue and groove lock. It is used when there is a chance of the stem or top rolling, such as on steep terrain. Always keep your body on the uphill side. The cutter may choose which side to set the tongue, as in the case of cutting grade logs. Use the attack portion of the saw to bore cut, then make a top and bottom cut offset from the groove cut. The last technique is for spring poles. If at all possible, leave it alone. If you must cut, then make a plan and identify the sweet spot. A cut here will neutralize the reaction forces. Your body needs to be at a 45-degree angle on the good side of the spring pole away from the reaction. Imagine a vertical line from the side of the pole and a straight horizontal line at the top. The 2 lines intersect and form a 90-degree angle. Halfway between the lines is the 45-degree angle known as the sweet spot of the spring pole. At this point, you can cut it on the back side or the underside. If the cut is made on the back side of the pole, you are cutting tensioned wood that is released quickly. If you shave under the bow, compressed fiber is released at a slower rate and could be considered safer than cutting on the back side. If you make the cut on the back of the pole, you are cutting tensioned wood, which releases quickly. After releasing pressure, trim the stem at ground level. Please remember, do not manually cut spring poles if mechanical equipment is available. Another type of damage you may encounter is uprooted trees with the root system still attached. These pose a special problem. Their weight places pressure on the stem, and once they are released, will likely flop back into the hole. While entering the work area, the timber cutter must be taking in information and forming his plan. Be certain to check for overhead hazards. Spring poles may be present. If possible, remove them by using safe and proper techniques. On small root clumps, you can see behind them and avoid having any nearby workers being struck. It's good to know where everyone is at all times. Glance up and search frequently. There are many safe techniques for removing tree stems from their root systems. In this situation, the cutter chooses not to expose his body to the bad side of this stem. Using his knowledge of the saw's reactionary forces, he chooses to cut the bad side with a pushing chain, or the top side of the bar. The first cut is made less than halfway through the bad side. The second cut is made less than halfway through the remaining side. A 1-inch section of fiber has been left in the center of the stem. The third cut removes the fiber. If a binding situation occurs, a locking cut can be made to avoid the saw from being pinched. Important to this situation, the cutter never exposed himself to the tensioned side of the blowdown. Not all root clumps or balls are the same. Root systems may be high enough to block vision and allow someone to approach without notice. An observer is helpful to police the area. The observer's job is to aid the cutter by making sure the crew is all clear before the operator releases the stem from the root system. After getting positioned on the good side of the stem, the saw is properly started and the cut is applied. The timber cutter is able to check with the spotter before releasing the tensioned stem. There will be situations where pressures and tensions make it difficult to determine a safe plan. In that case, you can use available equipment to minimize risk. Stabilize the stem and use hand signals and eye contact during the equipment positioning. Remember, the man on the ground has maximum exposure. Make the cut and, as mentioned earlier, be prepared to use a plastic wedge if you feel the saw bar pinch in the making. Move off to a safe distance and signal the skidder operator to lift and pull. The stem can now be limbed and bucked in a safe position that you determine. A tongue and groove lock was used in this situation. This lock keeps the root clump stable, avoiding a violent tension release. Mechanized logging equipment can assist the stumper. The skidder can lift and break the lock in one smooth motion. With the timber cutter out of the danger zone, the stem can be removed mechanically. The skidder pulls the tongue out of the groove. Another problem you may encounter is a side-loaded stem. Great care must be used with this hazard, as this extreme amount of tensioned wood can be fatal. In this sequence, the cutter sees the obvious tension that was created by the storm. He positions his body on the compressed side of the blowdown. His body is on the safe side, away from the swing path of the stem. Side load is obvious in this scene, as well as a spring pole being present. By using a shield tree, the cutter is able to remove the spring pole and release the stem from the root clump. All of this work is done from the good side, and the cutter never exposes himself to the tensioned side of this risk. Manual felling is the most hazardous job in the woods. Manual felling should only be done by highly trained and educated employees. The manual felling process mandates a proper face notch with no bypass. In other words, both cuts of the notch must meet. The face notch actually sets the length of the hinge wood to be used to fell the tree. The hinge on the tree has two major purposes: to direct the direction of fall and to control the tree during its fall to the ground. Proper hinge wood reduces the risk of rebound. The felling section of this film is very limited. For now, remember this: only trained professionals should attempt manually felling activities. Hopefully, today you've learned some new safety guidelines that will make your work safer. Just remember that cleanup of storm-damaged timber is a slow and tedious affair, and much more hazardous than conventional harvesting. Take your time, plan your work, and practice safe techniques. What you heard today may prevent you hearing this tomorrow.
After completing today's course, for online classes through TeamSafe Trucking site, print or save your certificate of completion. Top training deadline is June 30th of every year. You must complete the training update and pay the renewal fee by June 30th to maintain top train status. There is a 1-year grace period to make up missed training or repayments. If you have any questions, please contact me at the Forestry Association of South Carolina. You can visit southcarolinaforestry.org's top program section for the latest information on classes, fees, and trained listings. This update aims to help improve safety, productivity, and environmental protection. And again, from all of us here at the Forestry Association of South Carolina, thank you for all your hard work and all that you do to keep the South Carolina logging force relevant.